Hello everybody, and welcome back to Steven's Fight Show. Okay, so real quick, a disclaimer before the video. If my voice sounds a little bit off, then it means I'm ill. If it sounds hard to listen to, I do apologize, but this is how things are going to be. Alright, so Petr Yan and Merab just fought in a 5-round main event fight, and it was a stellar performance by Merab. And it was so good that it was undoubtedly a depressing experience for Petr Yan fans. Merab essentially stifled everything that Yan could do on offense and forced him to be defensive the entire fight. He took him to the deep ends and drowned Yan with a relentless pressure, pace, and wrestling intensity. Merab was all gas, no brakes. He didn't let Yan have a second to breathe in this fight. And stylistically, Merab was a very tough matchup for Yan, and I'll explain why. People thought Merab was going to get run over by Yan. People thought Yan was going to beat him easily. And for me, I thought otherwise. I knew this fight was going to be tough for Yan, but I didn't expect Yan to lose, and I didn't expect him to get beaten the way that he did on that night. Everything looks great from Merab's perspective, but if you look at it from Yan's perspective, it certainly looked like a frustrating night. It's never fun when you're facing somebody who you can't get off of you and strictly just thinking about what they're going to do and not what you're going to do. That is essentially the story of this fight. I've never seen Yan lose this badly. Like, I've been keeping up with Petr Yan for a while now. Against Aljo, I didn't feel like he got beat. Yes, he lost, but he didn't get beat like that. He was clearly winning the first fight before getting DQ'd. The second fight was a close fight, but I thought Aljo had a better performance than people expected. Against Suga Sean, it was a very close fight. I still think that Petr Yan won, but it's certainly not an incorrect decision for O'Malley. However, even though Suga probably inflicted the most damage on Yan, it wasn't like it was straight domination. This fight was truly the first time I've ever seen Yan get completely outmatched. Like, he lost this fight so bad that it looked like he didn't even belong in the cage against Merab. It looked like he was an unknown contender getting smashed up. 50-45 is honestly crazy. And when you think about it, it's crazy how things haven't been the same for him ever since he threw that illegal knee to Aljo's face. He's gone 1-4 in his last 5 fights, and it begs the question, what would have happened if he never threw that knee? I still personally think that he would have had some tough fights, but he probably wouldn't be in the position that he's in right now. The only fight that he's won out of his last 5 fights is against Corey Sandhagen, and he's a very good contender in this bantamweight division. And in that fight, Yan looked great. He outclassed Corey, but it wasn't like it was a punishing victory. That's what we know Yan for. His name is No Mercy for a reason. However, it's been a while since we've seen Yan look extremely dangerous. Like before, people were saying that he can be the bantamweight GOAT. People were even discussing a potential fight between him and Volk. Even after Yan lost to O'Malley, people were still calling him the best bantamweight in the world. However, a loss like this will definitely take him out of that picture. Alright, so now let's talk about the fight and break it all down. The story of this fight is pretty much the same because Merab stepped on the gas pedal as soon as the fight started, and Yan didn't even get an opportunity to make adjustments. Hence, the story was very one-sided. So let's take a deeper look as to how Merab was able to completely nullify Petr Yan's offense throughout the fight. In order to do that, we need to look at what Yan is good at. We know the most obvious threat from Yan is striking. I can't stress this enough. Maybe this is not a good time to say this because he lost, but Yan is an incredible striker. People refer to him as one of, or arguably, the best boxer in the UFC. He's got phenomenal hands where he can land punches that are very fast, powerful, and sharp. The combinations and the bodywork are great. He also has great setups to his punches as well. On top of that, his kicks, in my opinion, are just as dangerous as his hands. He has a really good Muay Thai foundation. The leg kicks and the body kicks are brutal. The elbows and the knees are superb. In addition, the spinning attacks are dangerous too. I mean, offensively, in terms of striking, Yan has very few flaws. But this also means that he is not perfect. And it just so happens that his flaws aren't in line with Merab's strengths. But we'll get into that just a bit. Defensively, his high guard is very efficient and tight. His opponents typically have a hard time finding his chin, but as great as it sounds, everything has its detriment. So we just went over what makes Petr Yan a dangerous fighter. Let's look at what he doesn't do best. The most obvious thing that you can catch on to if you ever watch Yan fight, it's the fact that Yan has a tendency to start slow. Now logically, starting slow isn't always a bad idea. A lot of people fail to forget the fact that 5 MMA rounds that consist of 5 minutes is a very long time. If you're not careful with your work rate, you can easily sprint yourself out of the fight. However, in MMA, because it's such a diverse sport, the phrase styles make fights is very evident. Depending on who you fight, you can either have the luxury to start slow or fast. The issue with Yan is that he always chooses to start slow no matter who he fights. Even against Suga in his last fight, it was a 3-round fight, And still, Yan decides to start slow like it's a 5-round fight. And against Merab, who's going to keep a very high pace and work rate for 5 straight rounds, if you don't start picking it up in the early rounds, you're pretty much giving rounds away. Another problem with Yan is his defensive ability. Like I said before, the high guard is very effective, especially against strikers. He can easily block punches and counter with a couple of his own, but the dilemma here is that he can get very stationary at times. In any striking sport like boxing, kickboxing, or Muay Thai, keeping your hands up is a very good skill to have. The issues that most fighters face when doing this is that they can get way too comfortable holding their hands high and they forget to stay on their toes and move around. And that is the problem that Yan is having. He does move his head, but he can get caught being flat-footed at times. So if you look back to this fight where Merab is constantly coming forward with punches and takedown entries, if you don't decide to move and you're content with being immobile, shielding, and you're not able to land strikes offensively, then you are in a world of trouble. Lastly, Petr Yan using his high guard pretty much leaves his legs and hips wide open. In my opinion, Yan has underrated wrestling and he has good takedown defense. But no matter how good you are, if someone tries to attack or feint at you, and your first reaction is to immediately shield, then defending takedowns is going to be a lot harder regardless if you're superb at defending takedowns. So it's one of those cases where this is going to work until it doesn't. This would be acceptable in striking competitions, but this is MMA, and like I said again, this is a versatile sport. So going back to the question of how did Merab completely shut down Petr Yan, well, anything that Yan doesn't do well, Merab took advantage of it. Yan is usually at his best when he can dictate the pace and force his opponents to cooperate with it. However, he didn't have that option in this fight because Merab took initiative right away. He understands that Yan doesn't like to start fast, so in that case, he's going to start fast the entire fight because he knows he's capable of doing that. I mean, after 2 rounds, Petr Yan was already leaning against the fence with exhaustion, and in my opinion, not only did he look physically tired, he looked mentally tired. That's where you gas out the most in fights. Throwing a lot of punches and kicks or shooting for takedowns will get you physically tired, but when you are forced to do things that you don't intend to do, that's where you become mentally tired. And that's how you can just be completely out of the fight. And for Petr Yan, he sure did not look like he wanted to fight at the pace that Merab was fighting at early on. Merab knows that Yan is also going to shield if he throws punches, so he'll set up his takedown attempts by throwing an overhand and then shooting. Merab was constantly using straight punches to set up his takedown attempts, and it was working over and over again. This was a constant routine for him the entire fight. It would be strike, 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 takedown, strike, strike, takedown, strike again. Not too many people on the roster of the UFC can do this. I mean, bro, 49 takedown attempts is absolutely insane. There were many moments in this fight where I remember Merab holding Yan up against the fence, Yan then separates, and not even 2 seconds later, Merab is shooting again. So we understand that the pace, pressure, and the wrestling intensity stopped Yan from attacking, but it also led him to being outstruck on the feet as well. Merab is not a better striker than Yan, not at all. But because of his wrestling threat and his work rate, where one guy is throwing more and one guy is being defensive, eventually, the guy who's being defensive is going to take more damage throughout the entire fight. Also, I forgot to mention the leg kicks from Merab. He was able to hurt Yan's left leg early in the fight, which was huge. This gave him an advantage early in the fight, and it also took away Yan's ability to switch stances, which is one of the qualities that make him a great fighter. Even though Merab shot 49 times and only landed 11 takedowns, that wasn't going to affect him because those takedown attempts are putting Petr Yan where he wants him to be. He's forcing Yan to go backwards by throwing punches and kicks. So all in all, when you break it down, there wasn't much that Yan could have done. Starting faster could have helped, but I think there was a possibility he could have faded badly later in the fight. Another issue I forgot to mention is the fact that Yan loads up on a lot of his strikes. And whether or not they land, they're going to take a lot of energy. So if he would have thrown big strikes and been unsuccessful in terms of hurting Merab, or even worse, missing, he probably was going to get finished. Yan wasn't even landing clean with any power strikes, and he should have tried to at least find the target before loading up. Yan is also a good counter striker, and people were wondering why there weren't any knees or uppercuts from him when Merab stepped into range, and the reasoning is very simple. Anything Yan was trying to execute offensively at distance, it was all going to get smothered by Merab. There were many moments where Yan would throw leg kicks, but they wouldn't even land clean because Merab is constantly moving forward. Knees would have been too risky because it would have increased the likelihood of him getting taken down. The single leg would have been a lot easier for Merab if Petr Yan would have thrown knees. Uppercuts would have been nice, but realistically, he wasn't even thinking about countering. He was so focused on Merab's wrestling that, as I said, he wasn't even thinking about what he was going to do. And in the little moments where he could have attacked Merab offensively at distance, he was already fatigued and he was just anticipating the takedown attempt. He's not thinking about what strike he should throw. The lack of body kicks really hindered his success and dominance because he wasn't going to invite any opportunities for Merab to try to take him down. So watching it live, I thought Yan had to throw more jabs and leg kicks to keep Merab at his range, but I quickly realized that Yan has to knock Merab out cold to stop him from coming after him. Because realistically, Merab could have gone 10 rounds at that exact same pace, which is unfathomable. And this was the difference. Yan was going to just throw one power strike, and whether or not it lands, it wasn't going to faze Merab because he was willing to throw 4 or 5 strikes right back and plus another takedown attempt. I mean bro, even I just got exhausted from just saying that. Like, it's honestly insanity. If I was in Yan's corner, I wouldn't even know what else to say to him besides emptying the tank in the 5th round, but I think Yan just didn't want to risk getting finished. So when you break it all down, it's not hard to understand why Merab beat Yan so easily, and he essentially had Yan in a chokehold. Yan couldn't do anything at all. Like, Merab was winning so convincingly that he was gripping my man's cheeks. He was on some Izzy type energy against Vettori. And this puts Yan in a tough situation because now that he's lost the fight convincingly, you gotta wonder where is he at mentally, because this is a very common trap that great fighters fall into. If he doesn't sort it out as soon as possible, it could get very ugly for him, which would be unfortunate. To be the best bantamweight in the world, you wouldn't want your career to play out like this, especially when you have a lot of good years left ahead of you in your prime. And that is it, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to what I have to say. Like I said again, I'm sorry about my voice. There's just nothing I can do about it. But let me know, who would you like to see Merab face after this dominant performance? Where does Petr Yan go from here? Drop a comment and let me know in the comment section down below. Now, if you guys enjoy content that is related to combat sports, please drop a like on this video and subscribe to the YouTube channel down below. That would be greatly appreciated. Please follow my Twitter and my blog for further fight content just like this one. If you're a longtime combat sports fan, I promise you won't be disappointed. And other than that, it's been Steven, signing out. Peace!